So are you more of a speed freak evil son, a squig flinging Snakebites, a light fingered death skull, or a swashbuckling freebooter? Let's talk about the Ork Clans in Warhammer 40K. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Orcs, and in this video I thought we'd do an overview of the Ork clans in the current 10th edition of the game, a bit of lore and backstory to the great clans of the Orcs, and how it might be best to represent them in game right now, between detachments that seem most on theme for them, and certain unit choices that stick out above the rest. Jumping straight into it, let's start with the Evil Sons. Orcs of many clans fall into the Speed Freaks category, but the Evil Sons take this theme to a whole extra level. They're almost universally orcs that just love to go fast, whether that be by bike, buggy, plane, or truck, or soaring through the smoky skies in Deathcopters. They paint their armour in their iconic red, which as any sensible orc would tell you, makes a vehicle go far faster, and much to the bemusement of Imperial studying the orcs, it often does seem to be the case. The sheer speed and manoeuvrability of the Evil Sons battle formations can redeploy at ridiculous breakneck pace, and have often been known to completely confound battle plans by doing something wholly unexpected, say for example fighting a war over on one side of a continent, then the entire army redeploying to attack a city on the other side with very short notice and far faster than anyone would have thought possible. Apparently their red paint stems from a long tradition of daubing themselves in the blood of the foe, and in ancient times offering it up over to the grinning sun above. Some of the notable orc characters that fought from war bikes are evil sons from the past, such as the renowned Gotsmek, whose aim was to create a superhighway from one edge of the galaxy to the other through a series of portals, and the brutal and speedy Zardsnark the Ripper. So the best ways to represent the Evil Sons in game right now, Games Workshop did give them a detachment called the Cult of Speed in the recent codex. Any clan can use any detachment of course, but this one definitely seems like the on-theme one for the Evil Sons. Speed Freaks units able to shoot after advancing and falling back. Excellent for the bikes, buggies and deathcopters alike. They also have that fun faster than use enhancement that allows you to disembark and charge, which can get a mob across the board very scary out of a truck or wagon, and a few nice damage and defense shooting stratagems, particularly for things like warbike attacker guns up close. Basically anything with the Speed Freak keyword seems pretty appropriate for Evil Sons. The orcs are very well represented for different flavours of buggy that they can take to the table with, but bikers, deathcopters, planes and trucks all feel very appropriate here. Out of these, maybe the bikers and mobs jumping out of trucks might be some of the more powerful ones. I feel like the buggies maybe are just a bit underpowered right now. It would have been nice to have them hit a little bit harder perhaps. In any case, if you want to deploy some ludicrously quick orc formations hurtling across the battlefield, then the Evil Sons might be for you. Next up, we're on to the thieving gits known as the Death Skulls. This clan's well known to be looters, scavengers, and thieves through and through. Thoroughly mistrusted by the other clans, as there's every chance your favourite shooter or power claw might go missing if you've got Death Skulls in the vicinity. Though by Orky logic, if you're mighty enough, you should really just walk over to said Death Skulls, hit them very hard with a chopper or blunt instrument, and take it back. The Death Skulls are often found picking over and looting the spoils of war from enemy tanks, war machines, and the fallen, scavenging what they can to construct great and powerful war gear, bringing their ill-gotten gains back to the mechs, who might craft it in mighty death guns for their looters, or bolt firepower onto their great walkers and war machines, death dreads, killer cans, and the like. They perhaps have a greater love for Dakar and technology than the average orc, though at the same time are well known to be rather superstitious, daubing themselves in their lucky blue paint, which the orcs widely believe will ward off bullets and harm. Perhaps the most notable character is a sort of peripheral one to the Death Skulls in Mad Dog Grotsnik, the deranged pain boy that upgraded Gazgul from a mere boy into a mighty war boss. If an injured orc surrenders himself to his tender care, you might get anything from vastly upgraded cyborg limbs, welded into a death dread, or stitched onto a squig in some manner. You really don't know what you're getting. To represent them in game, perhaps Dread Mob is the best fit for a more mech-focused force. That detachment certainly has the power enough to transform looters from a kind of tame unit into quite a scary one. Adding in big mechs with shock attack guns can give them all the keywords to get things like lethal hits, sustained hits, or extra AP. You also get big boosts for their stompy vehicles and walkers and scrap creations as well. They get rather next level with the same buffs and stratagems. For more iconic units, looters and burners might feature fairly heavily. Walkers like Death Dreads, Gorkanauts and Morkanauts, and perhaps slightly mechanised in trucks and wagons disgorging boys into the enemy. The force no doubt headed up by some big mechs with some nice grand schemes. If you want to collect a force of lucky blue gits that always seem to have all the best firepower and equipment, maybe the Death Skulls might be for you. Next up, we've got the brash and ostentatious Bad Moons, these being the richest of all the Ork clans, by the simple nature of their teeth growing far faster than any of their counterparts, giving them a big advantage in the rough and ready Orky economy that revolves around teeth as currency, meaning that even the lowliest Bad Moon has a ready supply of wealth. Unless another bigger and badder Ork takes the teeth before they can spend them, Bad Moons can use their financial leg up to acquire all the best gear, often commissioning mechs and pain boys to give them great upgrades, the best armour that Teeth can buy with some snazzy mega armour, fancy snazgun weapons, and the latest ride in custom battle wagons. Compared with most of their Orky peers, they tend to have a greater love for Daka than melee combat of the two, though they absolutely can enjoy both, but their ranged focus does lead to a lot of sneering from the other boys around, being seen as too fancy to get stuck in the proper Orky way. For a few notable characters, there's Boss Nazdreg, Gazgul's right-hand man during the invasion of Armageddon and masterminded the great teleporter technology. Off-Tac Blackhawk had a recent Black Library model this year, tying in with his book The Big Daka. I think he's quite a fun model with his snaz hammer and fancy shooter perched on his squig. And Captain Badrock, the Freebooter captain, was formerly a Bad Moon as well, and the firepower of his flash kits are legendary. For in-game representation, they're a bit less obvious for any sort of single theme detachment right now. I feel like perhaps one oversight in the 10th edition Codex Orcs was not having maybe a bit more of a general purpose shooting style detachment. I guess the two more ranged focused ones are Dread Mob and Cult of Speed, though neither of them feels directly in line with the Bad Moons, perhaps a bit more characterised by being an infantry style shooting army. I feel like out of the rest, maybe Bully Boys could be an okay fit. It could certainly represent a Bad Moon elite going heavy on the mega armor and the battle wagons. Or I guess maybe Dread Mob if you want some general purpose shooty orcs. You could have some mechs join some shooter boys and things to make them a bit more firepower heavy, though them, like quite a lot of other shooting and firepower orcs, do tend to be a bit underpowered. For more on-theme units though, I feel like flash kits fit in really well, maybe Nogs and Mega Knobs, battle wagons, and perhaps shooter boys over chopper boys, all headed up by some war bosses with some ostentatious gear. In any case, if you want to collect an army of the cream of Orc society painted in bright yellow armour, the Bad Moons might be the rich and shooty clan for you. Next up we have the Goffs, thought to be the biggest and meanest of all the Orc clans. These are the guys who believe in no mucking about and none of the fancy distractions that the other clans have from good old-fashioned Orky melee violence. They're perhaps the archetypical Orc that Imperial scholars might picture, generally making war in great numbers, huge hordes of boys flooding the field, and their elites number amongst the biggest, strongest, and most dangerous orcs to fight in hand-to-hand melee combat. They typically fight in dour blackened armour, often with check motifs, and as perhaps the biggest and most central clan out of Orky culture, they've got numerous notable heroes from the lore: the mighty Grok Face Ripper, Warboss of the Red War, Boss Zagstruck, the Stormboy boss, who descends upon high with the Vulture's claws, and of course the biggest and mightiest boss of them all, Gazgul Thraka, Scourge of the planet of Armageddon not once but twice, well known to be the biggest, meanest and greenest boss around. In-game, being a central clan dedicated to melee violence, there seems like there's multiple different formations that could work really quite well for them. I feel like just the standard Warhorde is maybe the most obvious fit, a general purpose attachment that rewards orcs in melee, extra violence with all the sustained hits they have on all their melee attacks, plus stratagems to help get them there, and weather the storm of enemy shooting on the way. Depending on the exact flavour of boys that you're playing though, Green Tide and Bully Boys I think would both work kind of equally well. Goffs are well known to make war in great numbers. Their elites are really big and scary, and all three really revolve around Orc melee combat as the proper way to get things done. Goffs are well known to make use of most of the Orky ways of war, but their archetypical units are probably the more standard things for simple melee violence without too much fancy stuff. Standard boys, knobs and mega knobs, war bosses to lead them into battle. Maybe Storm Boys could have an okay fit as well, treating the business of getting orcs into melee unusually seriously with their regimented nature. Moving on, we've got the tribal Snakebites, whose clan preferred the old ways. The Snakebites are an Orc clan that tend to see anything vastly more complicated than a slugger or shooter as a bit newfangled and not very orky, which leads the other clans to sneer at them in turn, calling them backwards savages. As a result of rejecting any technology, they tend to live rugged and harsh lifestyles, often domesticating local fauna or breeding great squigs to do some of the heavy lifting for their tribe when times need it. Snakebites are well known for shaking off any hardship that comes their way, and are fantastically resilient to injury. They're also immune to a good amount of venoms and poisons out there, partly due to their initiation rites of allowing venomous snakes to bite them and then sucking out the poison before they should succumb to the venom. Snakebites feel like they've done well in recent years out of the Orc army range with the dawn of the Beast Snaggers. A couple of their more notable characters are Mosrog Scragbad, the beast boss that tames the great white squig, and Zodgrod Wartsnagger, the renegade bruntherd with the big hair, who trains his Gretchen as super runts, bigger, fiercer, and stronger than any of their kind, to the point where many a warboss might enlist their services to fight alongside them in battle. In-game, for detachments in the Ork Codex, their big hunt feels like the most obvious one given its focus around beast snaggers, and I feel like basically all the beast snagger models really do well for Snakebites in particular. A tribal orc kind of theme with great big squigs, and most of them more resilient to enemy attacks than most with their feel no pain type saves. The big hunt allows you to focus on one big enemy target, like a monster or vehicle, and get bonuses towards destroying it. I would say compared with some of the other detachments though, it maybe is a bit limited. It just feels a bit opponent dependent and sort of necessary that the opponent has good monsters or vehicles to hunt. If they don't, then it's going to fall down a bit, and does mean that you need to build most of your army as beast snaggers to take advantage of the rules, which you might or might not want to do. Otherwise though, Green Tide could work well enough. If you want to focus mainly on just regular boys with choppers, that feels appropriate enough for Snakebites, particularly as they'd be so tough in that formation. An otherwise standard Warhorde could do fine. Melee focus seems appropriate enough, and not going down the route of heavy firepower too much with mech creations. Besides beast snaggers, maybe having a good number of Gretchen and perhaps some weird boys in the mix will be fairly appropriate for Snakebites. I'm sure you can make plenty of things work with some cunning conversions though. Next up, we've got the sneaky commandos of the Blood Axes. This plan loves overcomplicated battle tactics, camouflage patterns, often with multiple different designs on the same orc, and drilling their mobs with all sorts of crafty squad disciplines, at least some of which actually gets employed in battle, though many might just get forgotten in the din of the fray. In more ancient orc history, some theorised that the Blood Axes were originally meant to be a leader caste in the race, seeming to be a bit more pragmatic and able to embrace a few more bigger picture type plans, such as unorthodox things like negotiation and trade with humans when it makes sense, though mostly this just leads the other clans to brand them as untrustworthy gits. Blood Axes can be a very unexpected foe to fight on the battlefield though, most opponents expecting orcs to be hyper aggressive and charge at them choppers waving, so when the Blood Axes deploy some more advanced maneuvers, such as camouflage orcs, cutting enemy lines and destroying supplies, or basic feints like sending some boys to draw the enemy fire before the main attack is declared in a completely different direction, it can lead to ruin for a foe that's underestimated them. Perhaps the best known Blood Axe is Boss Snickrot with his Red Skull's commandos, a sinister figure that fought on Armageddon. Many a guardsman would sleep uneasily, not knowing if the boss was prowling out there with his signature blackened blades, Mork's teeth. Again, I'd likely say that Blood Axes maybe don't have quite as good direct representation in any one detachment. Some of the other factions in 40k got a more stealth and infiltration type force, but the Orcs didn't. As a result, maybe the standard Warhorde again might be one of the more appropriate ones there. And it's a nice, simple and effective one that will make things like their commandos and storm boys more scary, extra damage output to the units that they're best known for, the commandos to sneak into enemy lines, and the storm boys with their regimented battle drill, and sheer speed with their rocket packs being able to strike at unexpected quarters. In any case, if you want to collect an army of sneaky and wily orcs that display some alarming battlefield strategy, then the Blood Axe might be the clan for you. Next up, we've got the orcs that have kind of disavowed themselves from other clans. The Freebooters are the piratical orc raiders, most commonly plying the galactic void in their kill cruisers in search of riches and glory under the jolly orc flag. The origins and character of the Freebooters can differ really quite a lot from warband to warband. Some will have taken up the freebooter lifestyle out of necessity, some out of choice, and they typically operate making war under a leading captain who decides what campaigns they're going to fight, maybe acting as mercenaries or raiding enemy outposts to secure supplies out of opportunity. The most notable freebooter is Captain Badrook, captain of Der Blacktooth, well known to be the right-hand man of many a great war boss leading several wars. The firepower of the snaz guns that his flash skits can dish out is legendary. Again, I feel like freebooters, maybe a bit like Bad Moons, would have been quite nice to have a general purpose orc firepower kind of detachment, something that amps up things like flash kits in particular. Perhaps the unit they're most known for outside of more generic orky picks. Lacking that, maybe just something like generic Warhorde or Bully Boys, and then add the theme through the units that you take. Probably lots of flash kits are going to be the main thing. I guess in general, maybe a bit more of an infantry theme over vehicles and things, given that they tend to deploy from their kill cruisers as opposed to have vast arsenals of vehicles on the planets that they attack. Kind of a shame that Badrook's datasheet got cut from the latest Ork Codex, though I guess you can still play him with Legends rules. The flash kits certainly look the part though, plenty of pirate hats and cool trophy racks and things. In any case, if you want a piratical force of Orky raiders, then a force of freebooters might be the ones for you. Finally, and also not really one of the unified clans, but an army that I thought I should mention are the Rebel Grots. Definitely a fan favourite for an army to make conversions out of, representing the rare occasions where Grot society finds a bit of a backbone to stand up against their Orc masters and oppressors, and set out to form their own little towns in the name of the revolution. The most well-documented example happened on Gorka Morka, where the Gretchen were initially going to be prohibited from leaving on the Great War that was going to depart from the planet, and revolted against the Orcs as a result. They were led by the Red Gobbo, a mythic hero that many Gretchen have acted up and assumed the mantle of, spreading the revolution to many worlds. For ways to represent a Gretchen revolution in game currently, probably Dreadmob might be the best bet, given that formation allows you to field Grots as battle line, meaning that if you really want to cover the table in Gretchen, you could have 132, including the Runt herds, so if you're going for a full Gretchen army, you might need to convert some bigger fightier Grots to represent them. Otherwise, it's quite nice in boosting things like the big guns and the killer cans, the Gretchen's other units, so it actually fits in with a Rebel Grots army perhaps surprisingly well. I feel like at the core of the army you'd probably want a good amount of standard Gretchen units, killer cans and mech guns, and I think will be at least somewhat effective in the Dreadmob style rules. It's not exactly top tier competitive or anything, but playable enough casually. And for any other Orky vehicles and things, if you just converted them to have Gretchen running all over and crewing them, then I'm sure you could use pretty much what you wanted besides that. If you're dipping into Legends as well, you could also use the Grot tanks and Mega tanks from those rules. The Mega tank in particular feels kind of iconic for the Gretchen type setting. Little Gretchen battleships with a whole bunch of guns sailing their way across the board. In any case, if you want to cast down the Orc oppressors, then maybe a Rebel Grots army could be a good conversion project for yourself. Finally, as well as choice of clan, and bear in mind you can just collect orcs to one given archetype, maybe make your own warband with your own colours and things like that. There's plenty of orky subcultures that you can realise as the theme of your army without necessarily dedicating them to the clan that feels like the most central one for them. I feel like maybe the Beast Snaggers and the Speed Freaks might be the best examples of those. Games Workshop have billed the Beast Snaggers as the orcs that like to hunt big monsters and squig breeders and things, though it doesn't mean that literally all of them have to be Snakebites. And the same for the Speed Freaks that like to zoom their way quickly towards the enemy. Not all of them are evil sons, and they could hail from their own clans and warbands. Particularly in 10th edition as well, we could just collect to one of the 6 detachments in the book, go down that kind of archetype such as Dreadmob or Green Tide, and maybe have that as the main theme for the army and clan choice as a secondary kind of thing. In any case, let me know your thoughts on the Orky clans down in the comments below. Look forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas on them, which clan is the best and why. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel and you'd like to help keep them coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description. Making so many Warhammer videos each day does take a fair amount of time and effort, and if you are listening regularly and you'd like to help support them, any help is greatly appreciated. Channel patrons get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.